Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm just going to do a very quick talk on my experience in 2022 with the camera of the iPhone SE from 2016. Now going quickly through the specs, you've got a single 12 megapixel camera on the back. Now hardware wise it's showing its age in a time of big 48, 64 and 108 megapixel cameras with pixel binning technology. So the hardware of the iPhone SE is obviously quite old now, and of course it has a rather narrow f2.2 aperture, which obviously is quite old now considering the majority of camera systems these days are at least come in with an f1.8, and of course you've got 1.6 aperture cameras as well. So in terms of a hardware perspective with the camera, it is going to be showing its age, and also the image processing from the A9 processor inside is going to be showing its age in comparison to say the iPhone 12s and the iPhone 13s of today. So I just went out in the garden and I took a few photos in various conditions. So I'm just going to talk about those photos and see what you guys think of them. So the first photo I took on the iPhone SE in this particular example is just in my garden, just as a general photo. And as you can see here, the overall look of the photo is quite dark. HDR does a pretty good job at retaining the blue of the sky, but the foreground of the photo is quite dark. Now, this was towards the sun was up above this red tree here. Now this next photo, I tapped on the screen to brighten up the foreground a little bit, and unfortunately what that did is it did then overexpose the sky, and HDR wasn't able to control those bright areas. So the sky, as you can see, is very much overexposed, but then also the area down in the bottom right hand corner of the top of the hot tub, that is slightly overexposed as well, whereas you know the main part with the grass and the shed, that is exposed pretty well. Now in terms of detail, if you zoom into this photo, you can see that there isn't a huge amount of detail in this photo, and that's going to be mainly down to the sort of lower resolution of the 12 megapixel camera and then that narrow f2.2 aperture, which doesn't allow as much light in as what a camera with an f1.8 aperture, despite the fact that it's basically directly at the sun. It just didn't produce a huge amount of detail as to what I would have liked from a photo. Now this next one of this little red plant thing, sorry I'm not a plant expert, got no idea what it is, but this one actually produced quite a nice photo to my eyes at least. The plant itself was in a good amount of focus, and then you've got a nice bit of natural blur in the background as well. Despite the narrow f2.2 aperture, it did give a decent amount of blur in the background, and then it produced some nice natural colours, which to be honest is very much like Apple and all of their image processing. They do produce nice natural colours. There's no artificial boosting of the saturation or anything like that. And then I just did a little bit of a close-up of one of the leaves with a few raindrops on it, which again looks quite nice. It is focused mainly on the area of the actual leaf itself with the drops on, and then a little bit of the plant around the outside, and then more so around the outside you do start to get a little bit of blur in, which is quite nice. And then this one here, just a bit of a close-up on this flower. Detail looks pretty good. There was a decent amount of light to allow a nice natural looking photo. There's not really a huge amount I can complain on this one. Overall, with a lot of the photos, I did find that some of them were quite dull. I know that with certain phones, when they boost the saturation of the colours of plants and grass and all that sort of stuff, it can be a little bit much. This one is quite natural, but the green on the leaves there does seem a little bit dull to me. But let me know in the comments what you guys think of these photos so far. And then again on this one, a close-up-ish shot of this plant. The depth of field on this I thought was actually really nice, and the focus has shifted more over into the left hand corner of the leaves rather than sort of on the centre there, which is actually what I'd hoped for, and it actually did a really good job of focusing on the area that I wanted. And again, this is another angle from my garden, where as you can see, I didn't tap anywhere on the screen to focus on this one. This is just how it came out. And as you can see, again, up in the sky, it's ever so slightly exposed. Over on the right hand corner, you can see a bit of blue sky where it's sort of done a bit of a better job controlling the brighter area. But definitely through the trees on the top left corner, you can see that the exposure is ramped up a little bit too much. And this is just the typical lovebird photo that I take in all of my camera tests, and this is a good way of showing what detail a camera can pick up with the indentation of the feathers on the ornaments. And in this particular case, it did a pretty good job. There have been other camera tests where other cameras have picked up a little bit better quality of that detail. And then again, depth of field on this one is pretty good and is nice and natural. Now this next photo is probably one of my favourites that I've taken with the SE. It was just a point and shoot opportunity just on the top of the hot tub cover, and it's just something with a bit of character. It's a little bit different, and again you've got a nice bit of focus on that sort of raindrop bit in the centre, and then you've got a bit of blurring on the foreground and then on the background as well, and it's not overly exposed in that back area where the sun was shining. So that particular one I am a bit of a fan of. Now as for selfies on the iPhone SE first generation, you do unfortunately get stuck with that same 1.2 megapixel camera that you find on the iPhone 5S. So of course photos from this camera aren't particularly great. I mean, there is a very noticeable lack of detail because of that low resolution, but to its credit, I think it does a pretty good job at retaining my natural skin tones, and there's no artificial smoothing on my skin like what you find on other Chinese brands of smartphones where they just smooth out your skin so you basically look like a Barbie doll and look like So iPhone SE does a pretty good job despite the lack of quality. I think it does a nice job at producing a natural looking photo. Okay, so that's my look at the camera of the iPhone SE first generation. As a general point and shoot camera, it's alright, it'll do the job, it'll take some nice snaps in daylight, but of course if you're going for newer models of iPhone or phones in general, of course you're going to get better quality photos. Now, would I recommend the SE as a camera phone in 2022? Probably not. There are better options out there, especially if you can find other older models of iPhone such as iPhone 10 or iPhone 8 or anything like that will probably get you slightly better results for probably not a huge amount more money. But like I said, as for just taking a few decent snaps outside, it does the job. But let me know in the comments if the iPhone SE is something that you've got or that you would look at getting in 2022. And let me know what you think of this video down the bottom, and don't forget to subscribe if you're into videos like this, and so you don't miss out when I post any new videos on other iPhones or other phones in general, which will be coming up in the near future. So again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.